Who's racing this weekend?
Woohoo!
Me.
Oh, you're racing.
Good luck. Should be fun.
Debo, do you feel like you want to race right now?
I'm very happy to not be racing.
Okay.
I really am excited to do it again someday, though. But I'm having just as much fun
Doing this?
getting to BS with you for hours on end. This is great.
All right, Derek, how are we doing? Recording there? Ready to
Do I
stream?
need to sit like close to this? Am
No.
I good?
Yeah, I think we should be good.
Okay.
We're live? We're live.
We're live again. Welcome, worldwide Ultra fans. It is the third edition of iRunFar Live here. It is Thursday afternoon, about 4 p.m. So what are we, like 36 hours away from the start of the Western States 100?
I'm not racing, and I still just felt jitters down
I
my
just
spine.
got goosebumps. Yes. Anyway,
Sorry for the audience online. We do got a nice live audience here. Let's make some noise and let the people online know who's here.
yes, and we're broadcasting live from the Coffeebar here in Olympic Village. And thank you to them. They've been great hosts. They were very excited to support us with this new, exciting interview format. So thank you to the Coffeebar. Please give them some business as a thank you. Thanks also to our sponsors, DryMax, Buff, and Jaybird Sports, who support iRunFar, who, of course, is a invaluable resource for our community, so make sure you support them as well. Yes. Anything else we need to mention?
Well, this is Dylan Bowman,
yes,
and I'm Megan Hicks.
I always forget that part.
And we're here with our first afternoon interview is with Camellia Mayfield.
Hi.
So, Camellia, you are sort of an up-and-coming runner in the sport. You've had a lot of really impressive performances in the last couple of years. You live in Bend, if I'm not mistaken, Bend, Oregon, and you raced your way in just a couple months ago at the Lake Sonoma 50 miler, which is one of the most competitive 50 milers in the U.S., as everybody here I'm sure already understands. Was that your goal going into the race? Were you looking to achieve a golden ticket and race here at Western States, or was it a surprise?
Definitely not for that race.
Okay.
I had kind of put the dreams of Western States for this year on the back burner. I've got a couple other things going on in my life, so I'm like, I think maybe another year of developing my running would be fine. I had done Chuckanut the month prior, and I didn't perform as well as I hoped to. Mm-hmm. And so going into it, I didn't have a ton of confidence, but I just wanted to have fun, and I knew there was some really talented women racing it, so I'm like, I'll just shoot for top 10. And so pretty early in the race, I figured out that maybe I'd do a lot better than that. So it was definitely a great surprise, and I think anytime you get a chance to race a race like this that's so competitive, you just got to take it.
I mean, so this is an interesting story. This is going to be your first 100 miler, and you just decided like 2 months ago to do it? Just jump right in.
Well, I feel like I've been preparing to do a 100 miler for a long time,
Okay.
at least emotionally and mentally.
Which is like more than half the battle.
Yes, that's been my goal since I've started doing ultra marathons, that I wanted to race this race. As I think a lot of people who are doing it now and are continuously entering the lottery, I mean, it's a bucket list race. So it was a little bit daunting, just racing 50 miles in, I think it was like 75, maybe 80 degrees that day, and I'm like,
it felt really hot, didn't it?
It felt very hot. So when I finished, I'm like, okay, I can do double that, right? Maybe like 20 degrees warmer, right? So I knew that it'd be a challenge, and initially I was talking to Brian with iRunFar. I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely taking it. And then my fiance was like, let's step back a minute. Like, don't feel like you have to do it. But it definitely gave me that chance to evaluate and just really be like, I do want to do this. Yes, it might be a big jump, but you never know till you try it.
So iRunFar interviewed you once before after your podium finish at Lake Sonoma, but the viewing world, the iRunFar viewing world, still doesn't know too much about you. Can you talk about your background in running? I think you were a D1 collegiate runner, and I suppose you ran high school also.
Yeah, I grew up in Ashland, Oregon. Some of you may know that's where Hal Kerner lives now, and he actually had just started the running store in town when I started high school. So trail running definitely kind of gained some interest during that time. I then went on to run at Portland State University for my last 3 years of college. They convinced me to stay for a 5th year.
Is that where Ruth Croft ran? Did you know her?
She did run there,
Yeah.
and I was nowhere close to getting her record in the 10K.
She's very, very strong, so that's nothing to be ashamed of, I don't think.
Yeah. So I did the 10K there. Actually doing the regional meet for the 10K back in 2015. It was the last time I had to do any sort of heat training, with regionals being in Austin. And then the past 2.5 years after college, I've just been increasing my distance, doing a lot more trail races, which is pretty easy when you live in Bend. Yeah.
Well, you, in addition to sort of your interesting personal history, you also have an interesting family history, particularly when it comes to this race, right? Your dad has done the race, and I think you said your mom was pregnant with you one year when he ran the race.
Yeah, I believe he did it at least 2 years, 1991 and 1992, and I was born in 1992, June 28th, don't steal my identity. So actually he was finishing, I think he finished the race just like a few hours before I was born.
No way.
Yeah. And so he, unfortunately, due to drive time and lack of cell phones back then, he did end up missing my birth. And it's very interesting, like, talking to him, because he's coming down. I know.
What a great story.
But it is interesting talking to him about this race, because it definitely holds some special memories for him. Like, he can forget, like, life events that we've done and all that, but then he's like, oh yeah, at Forest Hill, like, you're gonna feel this way, and Devil's Thumb, that's, like, the hardest part. So it's definitely interesting the way that he has that history at this race.
So did you say that he's going to be crewing you this weekend?
He'll be around.
Okay.
He'll be mainly spectating.
Emotional support.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, choosing your crew for this race is probably one of the most difficult decisions you have, because in some ways it's harder than running it. The focus is making sure that you're in the right spot, you have all the things that you need to have, and at the same time the crew is also sleep deprived and has to have their own nutrition and all that. So
You've thought this through, though.
yeah, I have.
That's so interesting. I mean, with that story and the fact that you grew up in Ashland, which is the home of both Hal Kerner and Tim Olson when he won the race, there's some serious history. Yeah, serious history and success that's come out of that town. So I think that bodes well for you. But we're also curious, since this is your first 100-miler, and certainly the most competitive race you've been a part of in your short career thus far, do you have competitive ambitions you want to talk about going into the race, or is it more of just like, I'm going to sort of let myself develop as an athlete, get a good finish under my belt, and hopefully come back in the future and do even better?
I'd say definitely more the second option. I think one of the hardest things about running is essentially this is like a championship race, and you have no control about how the other people are going to handle the race. All you have is control over yourself. So my plan is just to run within my own ability. Really, especially early on, just take those internal gauges of how I'm feeling and how I hope to be feeling, and go from there.
Cool.
I think, are you a coach?
I am.
Okay. Is that your job, or what do you do professionally?
No, professionally, I'm a caseworker.
Okay.
Yeah, for the state of Oregon. So I also have a pretty emotionally demanding 9-to-5 job. And then I coach for trails and tarmac on the side.
Do you, going into an event like this that has a ton of unknowns, that's not unfamiliar territory for a lot of people here who are going to be racing everywhere from the front to the back of the pack. Are you analytical in your approach? Or are you like really just trying to absorb how everything feels moment to moment? Or what's your thought process going to be out there?
I'd say I'm definitely more moment to moment,
Okay.
like just really running in a mindful way about taking basically just that inventory of what my body needs, what emotionally I need. In the past, I feel like every race is training for something. Every life event is training for something, and I hope that when it gets very hard that I can pull on some of those experiences of when other races have been really difficult, or I felt hopeless before and gone through it. So I'm sure there will be those moments.
Cool. Well, maybe one more question. I just mentioned you're from Ashley, but you live in Bend now, and Bend is also a hotbed of trail and ultra running, and people who have been really successful at this race, including Stephanie, Violet, Ian Sharman, who are both in the race this year, Mario Mendoza as well, Amy Sproston. Have you gone on any runs with them or hung out with them and gleaned any advice from their experience?
Yeah, definitely Ian Sharman has been a wealth of advice. Since he's also a coach, he's very, outspoken in sharing his knowledge. I did the Memorial Weekend training camp, so we shared some miles together. And then, of course, Stephanie and I also sometimes run together. I think it's definitely difficult. I'm one of the, I don't know, I know some of them have, of course, like full-time jobs as well, but my schedule is pretty rigid, so it can be kind of hard to, when other people are training at such a high level, coordinating schedules can be very difficult.
Sure. But it's good to have that wealth of information at your fingertips if you need it.
Definitely, and just knowing like what are the good trails to go to, what other people are doing when, it's 40 degrees and we're trying to train for the heat. Yeah.
Well, it's been great to get to know you a little bit, and you seem wise beyond your years and experience. So good luck this weekend. I think it'll be a really interesting race to watch, and we wish you nothing but the best. So a round of applause, please, for Camellia Mayfield.
So we're going to take just a couple-minute break, and our next interviewee will be Francois Dehane.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Camellia. That was awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah. Nice to meet you. Great job.
Thanks.
We might need to go and usher him in.
Cool.
He's so popular.
Yeah. There he goes.
Hey.
How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Fine.
You good?
Yeah?
How have you
So-
been?
Fine.
In Auburn?
Yeah, 3-4 days.
And now here, just today.
Yeah, more cold here.
Are you good over there?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
We can both fit, even though we're big, tall men.
Perfect. Well, I think my English is still the same, eh?
I think your English is always good.
Your English is great. Look at how many people are here to see you. It's pretty cool, huh? Yeah.
Make him nervous? I think Francois, you can't
Cool
shake this
customer,
guy.
yeah.
Ready to get started, Mr.
Yeah.
Devo?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so we'll just riff.
Just say hello to.
All right, everybody.
Okay, welcome back.
Hang on for a second. Sorry. A little technical difficulties, I think. Testing 1, 2. All right.
Good to go?
All right, we're back. We are here at the Coffeebar in Olympic Valley. This is iRunFar live at Western States. It's happy hour, Thursday. It's about 36 hours to the start of the 2018 Western States. We're here with Francois Dehane.
Hello.
How's it going?
Fine. Happy to be here. Just hello, everybody.
So, Francois, you're obviously a man who needs no introduction, even here in the U.S. One of the great champions of our sport. So, it's an honor to have you here in the U.S. and running Western States again. You have a short history at this race. In 2015, you had a somewhat difficult 14th place finish, and then in 2016, you had a foot injury, if I'm not mistaken, that kept you from even starting the race, even though you traveled all the way out here. So, and in thinking about your career in the last 2 or 3 years, those are some of the only blimps on your resume, some of the only races that you haven't won. And so I guess my question for you is, what have you learned from, your experience in 2015 and your disappointment in 2016 that you think will help you be successful this weekend?
Successful this weekend, I hope, but we never know with ultra trail. So yeah, I learn a lot, but I learn like in each ultra and every year, every day. But I think I was a little bit unlucky, but I think there's more things than just lucky thing or not lucky thing. I think I have always the same season each year, and I think a little bit tired end of June. So that's why I think I jump on a rock and I break a bone, so you can say it's not lucky or lucky, you break it, it's not your fault, but maybe if you are more tired, maybe you break it. And in 2015, I think I was really in good fit because I was lucky to run with Rob Crow until Forested. It was really impressive, and you were in the race, and it was incredible.
It was incredible, yeah.
And I was really happy to have this experience with him. But then I have a big stomach problem that I discovered it like 1 month later. So maybe that's it, maybe I was tired, I don't know, but that's why this year I try to change it a little bit. So I don't plan some big race like you in April. I just plan to make some more easy race in April, just to plan to prepare a little bit differently. And in May I take like 2 or 3 weeks just rest, and then I go back and running. And normally my preparation is a little bit different. Now this race is very, very different from our ultra trail. Even it will be long, sure. The terrain is not the same, and the temperature is really not the same. So I don't know if I can beat the warm and I can make a good race here. But I try to put all the chance with me this year, so I try it. So now we will see. I hope it will be okay. If it's not okay, I have a lot of pleasure in my preparation. I'm excited to be there. It will be a nice adventure, and I think we both and you too, we made this sport just to like this kind of adventure. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. So I'm just happy to try it.
Good.
Can I ask you about, because this race is so different from ultra trails in Europe, with the heat and it being a much more runnable course, how have you adapted your training and your preparations specifically for Western States this year?
I try to adapt it, but for the heat, I tried to go. In French, we were not lucky because it was not warm at all this June, so I cannot train a lot in like warm temperature. I was a little bit in Corsica, so it's a little bit more warm. But I try to do like maybe 10 or 20 sauna since April. So for me it was hard because I'm not useful with that. So at the beginning I was like just 10 minutes or 20 minutes, and at the end I was like 35 minutes. So I think something's happened a little bit in my body. So I hope it could be maybe better in the warm on Saturday. And then for the training, at the beginning of the year, I said, okay, I have to train more on flat. I have to train more my like how fast I can be on the flat, but I don't like it. So I think a lot about that, and I think that my way to train is my way to train. I have to keep it. Maybe it could be something better for me in the ascent, and yeah, I think it's my. You have some default. You have some. Faculties, and I try to keep my faculties. So yeah, I train a little bit more on the flat, but I don't change a lot my training because it will be, even if it's more fast, it's a long race.
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting, and I think a lot of people think about you obviously as a world-class mountain ultra runner, races like UTMB. And I think people forget that you actually have done well on faster courses, including finishing second at the North Face 50, which is one of the most competitive races in the US every year on very fast terrain. Do you feel like this course, do you feel disadvantaged on this course compared to guys like Jim or Tim who live and train in Flagstaff with more flat terrain and hotter temperatures? Or do you think you have the capability to run as well here as you do in the mountains?
I think I can have the capacity to run here like in UTMB, because we mustn't forget that it's an ultra trail. An ultra trail is always very long. You have to adapt. You have to do many things. And finally, it's incredible, but it's just 11 kilometers. So I'm not sure I can run like a 10K in 30 minutes or 41 minutes or 42 minutes. I'm sure I can't actually, but I'm sure it's not necessary for that race. But what is hard for me is just that you have to run again. Mm-hmm. In the Alps you have to run maybe fast, but then you can walk, then run, then walk, then run. And I think I'm better when you have to change everything for your muscle, and this is what is hard for maybe the other runner. And this is what I really like, because in my training I always ascend, descend. I can walk, I can run, I can climb, and here you have to run and run and run and run again. I think this will be hard. The race pace, for me, it doesn't. I don't think it will be hard to follow it, because it will be like 14 kilometers by hour. Yeah. I can do it not easily, but it's not the problem. The problem is that you have to run sometimes during like 5 hours without stop.
Without a walking break.
Yeah. I think this is more hard than how fast is it. Running in 30 or 41 minutes, I think it's not necessary for that race.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about your relationship with the United States. You've come here to run so many times now. You've come for Western States now 3 times. You've come for the North Face. You've come to run the John Muir Trail and have a vacation around the U.S. What's the deal with you and trail running here?
No, it's a big country, so you have many things to discover. And I was mainly in the west part actually. So I really would like to discover the north part and some other place with some nice mountain. In Colorado, it was just one time. It was just amazing. I really would like to come for New Beer Miles in Colorado. I think it's a very, very important race here. But no, I really like it. When I go back there, I just remember the John Muir Trail with this blue sky, with this kind of mountain. Even when you take the highway from San Francisco from here, when you are at the pass, it just everything is big. Yeah. Everything is so nice. The trees are different. The rocks are different. I really like it, and I was really in love with the John Muir Trail. I speak with you like 2 days after. I was just like in a dream, and I really enjoy it. So I like the Alps, but it's different. It's more like secret. It's more ice. More maybe. It's different, and I think here for running it's very nice, and people are more like relaxing, more cool. It's less stressful. The week before UTMB, you can feel it in Chamonix.
Yeah, it's true.
Totally different. Yeah. Here you are like 2 days before Western States. You can work here. You can go in restaurant. It's easy in for UTMB. I can't do that. So I'm really happy to be there and have the possibility to relax a little bit.
And on that subject of UTMB and the John Muir Trail, of course, you're the 2017 champion of the UTMB, which was one of the most incredible performances I think we've seen in a generation. And then doing the John Muir Trail, what was it, only 4 or 5 weeks after, 6 weeks after what was an incredibly difficult, I'm sure, 170 kilometers around Mont Blanc. How did your body and mind respond to those two huge efforts back to back? And have you had to take a lot of downtime after the John Muir Trail?
I think this is why I actually think that it's really important to keep my normal job and my family and my normal life and a social normal life, not like an athlete life. Because after UTMB, it's depends each year, but this year I have to be at the vineyard for like 30 hours after UTMB to prepare the harvest, and I have a very full week with that, and I cannot sleep a lot, and I was really tired after that, even more than UTMB. But I can't think during this week about running, about try running. So normally the week after UTMB, if you are like an athlete life, you always have interview, you think about that, about your recovery, go to the physio. For me, it was impossible for me. So I think for the body, maybe it was not so good, but I'm not sure. But for the mind, I'm sure it was just perfect, because I was totally out of that. And then 10 days after UTMB, I was, I think, ready again to, okay, I want to be in the nature, in the mountain, and run again. And if I have not this 1 year stuff, I'm sure I was again in my, I should be again in my UTMB, and it was not like that. So I think it's important for me to keep this family stuff, social stuff, and everything. And yeah, John Muir, I don't have many possibilities, because it's very long.
Right.
So if I plan it before UTMB, I'm not sure I will be able to run UTMB. And so after October in Sierra, it's sometimes very cold. So I speak a lot with you about that, and you say me, maybe it's okay, maybe not, you will see. But finally, it was just this sky like that during like 2 weeks. It was just perfect.
The only problem was the long night times and short days in October. Yeah.
True, and during the night it was really cold, but at least there's no one on the trail. It was really nice.
Incredible.
But I think the recovery is just because my mind recovered very well.
Just when you go home and you're on the vineyard with your family.
And then we come here with 7 friends, so I say, okay, even if I cannot beat the record, I'm just here to have maybe one of the biggest adventures in my life with my friends. It's an incredible place, so I say, okay, I start. If I do 3 days, I do 3 days. If I do 8 days, I will do it. It's not a problem. I will be happy at the end. And when you start in these like feelings, for sure, your body answers up very well. So.
Cool.
I think that's it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, Francois, thank you so much for coming. It's great to have you here and racing in the U.S. and
it was nice to have a champion interview with you.
Stop it. No, but best of luck this weekend, and enjoy a nice long adventure here.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy to run like with Jim and some other guy from US and all the cowboys here.
Yeah.
I think it will be really nice to see them again, to see some other athletes and how it's enthusiastic to run that race. It's incredible when you pass in Forest Hill. You see how many people were there. Maybe there's more public than runner. It's just incredible that race. And there's something special around that race, and it's really nice. So I'm really happy to enjoy it with you.
Good.
Well, let's have our live audience give Francois a round of applause. And we'll be back after just a tiny little break with Cassie Lichtig. Is Casey back there?
I don't know. Yeah, there she is.
There she is, I see her. Got a glimpse under the people. Come on in, Casey. How are you? Good. How are you? You look great. I'm always waiting to see what colors you put in your hair for this race.
Change it up every year.
That's right. I know you do.
Things go well.
Things are going well. You?
Good.
Yeah. You're just arriving to town right about now?
Well, we were in Reno last night.
Got it. Well, for those of you who are here in our live audience, we do have the iRunFar store back there. We're selling t-shirts, buffs, Drymax socks. Take a sticker as you leave, of course. For our online audience, you can shop right now as you watch at iRunFar.com/store. Thank you for helping keep iRunFar afloat.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. Okay, so we're back again with Nebraska's own Casey Lichtai. This is 5 years in a row for you.
Yes.
You're the 2015 champion of the race. 2016 champion of the race. And we spoke to Stephanie Violet this morning, and I asked her the same question. Looking back now on these 5 years, and particularly having won the race, which is something that very few of us will ever be able to even dream about doing, what has that meant to you as an athlete and as a person to be able to be the Western States champion, and what does it mean to you to come back to the race so many years in a row?
Definitely this race has become part of who I am as a person. The community and everything about it. And so I just want to keep coming back and experiencing it and seeing all the new people that are coming and them getting the chance to run this race. So it's been a really life-changing moment.
Good.
So, if the live audience doesn't know, that's Andy Jones Wilkins. If the online, I'm sure the online audience heard AJW's arrival here. I want to ask about something that I'm seeing in the women's American ultra running contingent right now. There is a real evolution towards the idea of competing with women as opposed to competing against. And I almost feel like it's started at this race in the last 3 or 4 years with the picnics that you guys have at Sunrise on the Escarpment. Can you talk about your Sunrise dates, and can you talk about what's going on with women's American ultra running in that spirit right now?
Definitely. Like for us that we were out here, we came to this type of sport because of the community and the involvement of being together and seeing our friends doing the same things that we are. It's a sense of community again, and just being able to be together, enjoying the sunrise, and knowing that we're all in this together. 100 miles, we're going to help each other along the way. You may be first, you may be second, it doesn't matter as long as they're having the best day, and we're all friends, and that's what's important. Like, that's what this is about, is that we are all friends, and rather being a competitor, you're trying to compete against yourself and to help others along the way.
So last year you were at this race and you had, I don't know, is it fair to call it an epic of sorts from the river in?
Oh yeah.
And I mean, it took the companionship of women, right? It was like a women's journey on to the finish. So, what does it mean to keep coming back to this race that's just got such a strong, positive female presence?
Yeah, maybe tell the story about how Stephanie kind of picked you up there at your low point.
Yeah, so at the river I was having the lowest point you can imagine, and I was sitting there for probably over an hour, sitting there contemplating on whether to get my wristband cut or not, and I didn't think I could have it in me to, walk 20 more miles to the finish. And so I had my own pity party, and I sat there and thought about it more and more and more. And Stephanie Case, if you haven't heard of her, she's an amazing runner, an amazing person. She come in and sat down, and she started just chatting along. Her crew brought her chicken McNuggets from McDonald's. She's eating these and having the time of her life. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I had thrown up just about 2 minutes ago. I'm doing really well, but I'm just gonna keep going." And she's like, "Why are you here?" She's like, "I don't expect to see you." And I said, "I wasn't expecting to be here, but things happen during 100 miles, and I just can't get myself out of this hole. And she's like, well, you're finishing, right? And I said, oh, I don't think so. And she's like, oh, you're finishing. And she said, yeah. She pulled me up out of my chair, threw a light on around my waist, and said, let's go to the river. We're going. And she dragged me to the river. We got in the boat, and I said, okay, you can get me this far, but I'm getting across, and I'm just going to drop at Green Gate. And then I started going, and she picked my spirits up. Everybody else around there was, and I got across the river, and I said, okay, Miguel, we're finishing this. And Miguel's my pacer, and that's what happened. If it wasn't for her and her bringing me out of that really deep hole I had dug myself in, I wouldn't have finished. So the sense of community and something I will never forget.
Awesome. Sorry, we're just trying to tone AJW.
We're trying to tell AJW to shut up from the front of the
taking
river.
my
Somebody
time
could
away.
please take care of that. Well, not to go from one difficult experience to another, but shortly after UTMB last year, I think you had a pretty serious injury. And I'm not entirely sure what it was, but maybe if you could sort of walk us through what your injury was and how your progression has been to recover and heal from that, and how your body's feeling now leading up to Western States.
Sure. So after UTMB, I did the mistake of not recovering well, and I ended up running too much too soon right afterwards. And I was running a race. I ended up the last half mile of the race having a stress fracture, and ended up not knowing it right away, but it ended up making me debilitated basically for the next several months. So that was in October.
Like crutches debilitated.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't do anything.
No, for 4 weeks I was supposed to be non-weight bearing, and it literally happened on October 22nd. November 22nd, I got the email from Ultra Tour about getting into Western States. And so here I am, unable to even walk and using crutches still, thinking, oh my gosh, I have to go back to that race. This is the race of my life. Like, I love this race so much. So I knew right then that I was going to dedicate my complete fall, winter, everything to getting recovered, and I was not going to have anything going to, set me back. And so I went through physical therapy. I did so much cross training and lifting weights and everything just to be able to get to this start line. And today I can say I'm 100% healthy, and
Woohoo!
I'm super happy.
Talk about, because you were non-weight bearing for a period of time, and then you could do little walks, and you added in little runs, and you eventually did some shorter races, and you were able to do a 50-mile race at Silver State in May, which you also won. Like, you won every race in your comeback, basically. Talk about the process of adding in miles and training, going from 0 to 100, literally.
Yes, I remember the first day I was thinking about, I can't run a mile. I don't know how I'm going to run 100 miles, and is this something I should, I was really scared. So I built up very slowly, and I did a marathon, a trail race down in Kansas, and I thought, okay, this will be the first step. If I can get through a trail race that's a marathon distance, I can take another step forward. And I was able to run that race. Then I thought, okay, I recovered from that. I was sore. I still had injury soreness off and on, but I knew it wasn't the sharp soreness that had been previously. So the next stage was, okay, I'm going to sign up for Silver State, which I knew would be a really good test for me. And if I could finish that, I knew I could run 100 miles. And thankfully, my body was healthy, and it went really well, and I was really happy, and had continued on since then, and just taking slow steps to get there, but I've not had a setback.
Well, it's good that you're a physical therapist and you were able to keep yourself in check and be intelligent in your comeback. I wanted to ask you about something else that I found to be really cool recently, in that your mom ran and finished her first 100-mile race. I have goosebumps just thinking about it.
She did.
Can you tell us about what that was like to help your mom get ready for it and seeing her finish, and how cool that was?
That's going to be one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. She signed up for this race last year, actually. She was going to run Kettle Moraine 100 last year. My grandma had her bout of cancer, and so she wasn't able to train for it. So this year we decided that would be her goal race. and she asked me to pace her the last 37 miles of it, and so it was phenomenal to see her get there. She was healthy the whole way through her training. She ran the race. I got to pace her. She had the most positive attitude, and she would get these lows and she'd be like, I'm not quitting, I'm gonna finish. And just the remarkable experience to have with your mother like that is something I will never forget and I will always cherish. And she is already thinking of her next 100, so she's excited.
Of course. Is she going to be here this weekend?
No, she can't be, but she would love to be.
She'll be watching iRunFar, I'm sure.
And to all those out there, she stopped smoking at age of 40, picked up running. She ran, like 1 to 2 miles at a time, and now she's 56, first 100. So it's out there for everyone that you can do this at any age in your life.
Ultras are for everybody, literally.
Yes.
Well, that's a great lesson and a great place to end. So give it up for the 2016 champion, Cassie Lichtai. Best of luck to you.
So we're going to take a short break and we'll be back in just a moment with Ryan Sands. Sorry I interrupted.
It's okay.
Thanks everyone.
Sorry.
No.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys for doing this. This is really phenomenal. Like my grandma and all of them are teaching this life, so I know
Is that right?
Hi grandma! Hi grandma!
You should have said hi to her.
She had her biopsy today, so she's gonna
like see how.
She has some cancer again.
So this is all.
So she's gonna fight again, and she's ready.
Really good strength gathering. I feel like your family
My grandma raised 4 women by herself, or 4 girls. She's instilled in me to be strong and independent.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I'll be chasing you for 100 miles.
Oh yay! I'm excited. Thank you, Megan.
Yeah. Hey, how are you?
Good, and you?
Nice to see you.
Yeah, you too. You guys just get down a few days ago.
Pardon?
Did you guys just get down a few days ago?
Yeah. I got here on Monday and Brian came on Tuesday.
Okay.
How are you doing?
Yeah,
you
good.
Can't stay away from Western States,
No.
can you?
any excuse to come back.
Are you going to run it again someday?
Yeah, I think I want to come back next year.
Okay. I thought I might have seen you say that somewhere on social.
Yeah, I didn't after last year. I thought maybe kind of couldn't better that, but still got to.
It like stays in your blood.
Yeah. So
Why does this race do that for so many people?
I think it's just pretty unique and just I dig the whole community vibe. Even running on Sunday, you see race director, so I hit a blank now. Great. So kind of chopping down trees on the route and stuff, which is cool that the community's part of that.
He's out there.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I think it's big enough, but it's not massive sausage tree or kind of fun UTMB stuff, a little bit too over the shop. Yeah.
Did you tell AJW to be a little quieter?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, are we good? All right, and we are back. iRunFar live at Western States. It's happy hour here at Coffeebar. It's happy hour wherever you are at home.
Yes, we're here with last year's champion, the one and only Ryan Sands. Yes, you've had quite an interesting history here at the race, having run in one of the most incredible battles in race history against Timothy Olsen the year he broke the record, running one of the fastest times ever. Then you had some adversity, having to drop out of the race before it even started in 2015 with a stomach bug, having flown all the way from Cape Town. And then finally coming back last year and winning the race. Maybe talk a little bit about how satisfying that was, and are you happy you don't have to put yourself through it again this weekend?
Yeah, I think like Western States will always be part of my blood and kind of my DNA, or like I'm kind of frothing not to be racing on Saturday a little bit, but it's cool to be a part of the race and kind of pacing. And I guess I at least only have to run the last 60 Ks. It's not the full race, but
so you're doing Forest Hill all the way to the finishing.
Yeah, that's the plan if I can keep up with Francois.
Don't get dropped.
I think last year was definitely like just a really magical day for me and one of the best days of my life. And I think like part of the reason maybe not coming back this year, apart from being completely smashed from the Himalaya project, was thinking that I couldn't better last year and just like match that day. But I think just being back here now again, I realize I want to be back. It's just something so unique and special about this race.
So just talk a little bit about last year's race, because it was sort of historically difficult conditions, and you managed to run I think 16 hours and 20 minutes on a day where almost everybody was an hour and 15 hour and 20 minutes slower than they usually run on the course. So theoretically it could have been equivalent to about a 15-hour race, which is mind-bogglingly fast. How hard of a day was it for you, and how hard was it for you to be chasing Jim for 80 miles or whatever it was?
Yeah, it was definitely like I was destroyed from the river onwards. One of the toughest day of my life from a running point of view. Luckily, like from the start, I think I ran side by side with Jim for about 200 or 300 meters, and then I asked him if he's still going for sub 40, and he said like hell yeah baby, and off he went. So he was so far ahead. I didn't even think about him. I knew he was either going to have like a magical day or I was going to pass him somewhere completely destroyed, and luckily it was the latter. So from that point of view, like I started and I just knew it was one of those days I was feeling really, really good again, and just everything felt pretty smooth, and it was just about pacing and running my own race and really trying to look after myself in the heats. I think it's so crucial for this race, and not getting too far ahead of myself. And I think I got into Forest Hill and Jim was nearly an hour ahead, so I knew it was massive, but some of the feedback I got, I knew it
well, I saw you there. I remember telling you he looks gassed, but he was an hour ahead of you at that point.
Yeah, I heard he threw up at Forest Hill, and then also even at the 30-mile mark, the aid station after Duncan Canyon.
Robinson.
Yeah, Robinson Flat. I heard he had already sat down, so I knew he must have pushed pretty hard through the snow, which I try to be a little conservative going through there. So I knew something wasn't right, but yeah, when someone's an hour ahead of you, it's just like a whole nother world.
Right.
Can you talk about, one of the things that I saw you do at the race last year that I didn't necessarily see all of the front runners do is slow down and take your time to get yourself wet. You put ice everywhere. You had this epic hat and this epic ice bandana that you left aid stations with. Talk about just slowing it down and being methodical about that stuff.
Yeah, I think the main thing for me was just to try and cool myself down at the aid station. So yeah, I had that Super Mario style kind of ice hat.
I love it. I actually want one.
Yeah, it looks normal when it's not full of ice, but when it's full of ice, it's pretty.
You are Super Mario, literally. You the hair to match too.
Yeah. And then obviously the ice buff and ice in the sleeves. Just really trying to cool myself down because it's just so brutally hot out there. I think the canyon was just baking. I just remember 1 minute you're feeling fine and the next minute you just hit this hot pocket of air and you just feel completely knocked out. So yeah, keeping iced and really wet the whole day really helped. And
did you go into the there's a couple of places where you can get into water besides the river crossing? Did you take the time to get yourself wet at those places?
Yeah, mainly it was ice up until the river, but the river crossing I probably didn't spend enough time in the river. I was actually feeling so terrible there, and there are a lot of people around there. I think Brian was there. I was trying to put on a bit of a poker face and just get out of there as quick as possible.
Because Alex was actually really close at that point too.
So that's why I was pretty worried. I had kind of flashbacks of 2012 where I passed Timothy Olsen and then he came steaming past me, and I never saw him again. So that was definitely going through my mind. So I try to get up to Greengate as quick as possible, and those a couple of creeks after Greengate, I got in one or two of them, and my pacer Rainer actually had to kind of drag me out of one. I was pretty happy just to.
I think there's another runner called Killian Jornet who spent a lot of time in one of those
there,
creeks.
I think,
I was
those creeks have a magnetic force.
Well, that's so cool, man, and it's, I mean, just a dream come true, I'm sure, for you to get it done last year. And of course, you're back, and you don't get to just hang out this weekend. You're sort of in a high-pressure situation, pacing Francois, who's obviously one of the best in the world, maybe the best of all time at the distance. How did that idea come up? Did he ask you to come, or did Solomon ask you guys to do it together? Or?
Yeah, I was chatting to Greg, our team manager, about my schedule this year, and I was trying to find an excuse just to get back here. So I suggested to him and spoke to Francois earlier this year, and he was like, "Cool, it'd be great to have you part of the team." So it was kind of my idea to get back here, but really cool to kind of see how Francois does things.
Do you guys have strategy, or have you given him advice about how you've been successful at the race? Because he's had some troubles at the race, and it's rare for him to have troubles. So
from a running point of view, not too much, but from cooling down and approaching the race, I've tried to kind of impart a bit of knowledge, but Francois needs no kind of intro to Andrew.
The pacing Forest Hill to the finish is pretty serious business. I'm sure you've had to train for it.
Yeah, I was a little nervous because after Himalayas I've taken it pretty easy. Okay. So I'd actually last weekend I did a run with Francois, and we went out in the first part of the course, and I was sucking a little bit of air behind him, and he said it was just an easy jog. But luckily when you're running now down in the canyons and it warms up a little bit, we kind of a little bit more evenly matched.
Your South African blood starts cooling down, and his heat heats up.
Yeah, and the fact that he's run 100 kilometers already, that'll be a good governor. Well, let's talk a tiny bit about what you have coming up. I know you're going to UTMB at the end of the summer, a race you've had some problems at, some adversity at, and I think you're going to Europe shortly after you leave here. Talk about your preparation going into UTMB. You'll probably start pretty soon, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so doing UTMB, I need to get my butts into gear, kind of from a running point of view, and start getting some mileage in my legs. So
you look like you've let yourself go.
Slacking. I think living in Cape Town, I guess, is a bit like you. And living in San Fran, it's really hard to get big mountains running in. So I'm going to do 2 or 3 weeks now after this in Europe, just to try and get a bit of training, and then go back to family, and then head out to UTMB about 2 weeks beforehand. So that's the plan, and next weekend I'll do the Dubai Ultra. It's kind of an ultra out there, up to running, I think it's 60 Ks with about 6,000 meters of vert. So
that's in France, or?
It's in Austria. So,
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're setting yourself up for a good one.
Yeah.
And, hope you don't have another rough one there.
And hopefully I'll make it around the mountain this time.
Well, thanks so much for the interview.
Thanks.
Best of luck in pacing.
Thanks. Yeah.
And we'll be back in just a minute with a little prognostication session with that loud guy back there, Andy Jones-Wilkins, Brian Powell, and Dylan Bowman. So we'll be back in just a second.
Round of applause for our champion here.
Cool.
Yeah, great.
Cool.
Thanks, Ryan.
Cheers, See you.
See you out there.
Cool. Were you out on the route?
Yeah. My boss is pretty
Oh, you did? Oh, I did. Chico.
Oh, nice.
It's nice to be here and not have the stress of. Screw this guy. You get out of here, man. You're old news, man. Let me tell you. Oh, I'm going to take a picture. No. He has a cougar. You know? Okay, sorry. Yeah, let's get a beer.
Should I get a beer?
Yeah, I think we all. Is Megan in on?
No, Megan, go get 2 beers for us.
No, don't. 2 beers for us?
Well, for you, I have.
There's 3 people.
Yeah, have a beer. I think. Am I in the middle? Oh boy.
Oh, you gotta be in the middle.
Okay. AJW, don't trip on that. Yeah. You can limbo?
Do I have to limbo it?
You're not going to step over it with those, without any labrums.
With all those hip. So how much time do we have?
I'm going to get my phone out so that we.
Debo's running.
I'm gonna try and give us a little bit of structure here.
Good luck.
Just so everybody's familiar with sort of what we're trying to accomplish here. Of course.
Hey, Debo, way to go, man. Welcome. Hey, everyone, say hi to Debo. Yeah, he's been working his ass off this week.
This does not work for me. This is too easy. Anyway, we're just going to kind of BS about the race a little bit, talk about what we think is going to happen, who we're looking at. These guys are a wealth of knowledge, so, we hope it's entertaining for you guys here and obviously the live audience as well. But I guess jump right into it. I'm Dylan Bowman.
Brian Powell. Andy Jones-Wilkins. Good to see everybody.
Between the 3 of us, I think we have 17 finishes. Andy takes up 10 of them, but Brian and I together have 7. I have 3, you have 4, I think.
Something like that.
Yep.
Theirs are better than mine.
You're top 10 7 years in a row.
Let me tell you about 2005.
I don't remember that year.
All right, rein it in, guys. We're already off track. So I kind of want to just go through a couple subjects to try and give us a little bit of structure. The first being the conditions of this year's event. Andy, of course, you've been at this race every year for I don't know how many years, at least a dozen or more. And can you tell us what to expect on Saturday and how it might compare to a previous running of the race?
I think if the forecast holds true, it'll be the 3rd or 4th hottest race in the history of the race. That's just based on the Auburn temperatures and all of that. I think it'll be fun to see how that plays out when it all's said and done, but it's going to be a hot year.
So in terms of historical comparisons, though, is there another year you think?
Yeah, it's going to be like 95 and 06.
Yeah.
You think it's going to be that hot?
Yeah, but it's not going to
pre-baking.
It's not going to have the preheating, so it's going to maybe be a little bit softer than that. But the current race administration is not going to wussy course it and skip Michigan Bluff or skip Robinson Flat or something like that. So it's going to be a hot year, but it's going to be a pretty badass year, and it's going to reward somebody who's patient, who's smart, who maybe even has been here before.
Anything else about the conditions? Obviously no snow this year.
Yeah, which I actually think in some snow years it can actually be a little faster through the high country. It's pretty, most sort of technical sections of the course are early. And when they're covered by snow and it's not just this little snaking path, you can go point to point fast.
Right.
So it might slow down the high country a little bit for some people who are proficient at that. And the pre-baking, the preheating people might not know about is sometimes the heat waves build for a week or 5 days, and the canyons just bake and heat up day after day, and so it stays a lot hotter at night. Those rocks just glow practically.
Right, the runners are not going to have the heat coming up from below.
It's not going to be 85 degrees at midnight.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah, and I sort of see it kind of similar to 2013, which was a super hot year. The second year that Tim Olson won the race, he ran about 15, I think, to win. And I think just looking at the forecast, that was a year too where it was extremely hot, but it wasn't hot in the few days leading up to the race. But I think the big variable that I've experienced in the race is how early it gets hot. Do you guys know offhand what they're expecting early in the morning? Because oftentimes the hardest years are the ones where it starts warm and gets hot early, rather than the races that have the highest.
Well, I think it's definitely tracking like 2013, and that would be a really hot day early, and you had to kind of got to have your shit together by like Duncan, And if you don't have maybe a second bottle going from Duncan to Robinson, you're going to get behind. And if you get behind, you're never going to get ahead.
So here's a little. Here's a little tip. I mean, people often will try to go as light as they can in carrying water, but maybe you always carry a sports drink in one bottle. Carry water in that second bottle, because if you're not drinking all of it, use that to cool yourself in the high country.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of places to dip or get snow or anything like that for most of the race.
What I've said to a lot of people, including the guy who I'm going to be pacing, is, especially for the people who are wearing a vest, if you have the two bottles in your vest, carry a third empty one at least, just so you can, fill that up with water, like you said, to keep yourself cool, or to obviously supplement hydration.
You can catch up a little bit if you need to.
Yeah. Cool. Well, just to give us some structure, we're going to talk a bit about the fields now, starting with the women's race. And so I want to kind of prompt you guys, but in a way that's sort of specific, so that we don't go open-ended for hours. So
I can't imagine why that would happen.
Start with Andy.
Hey,
Andy, who are maybe the 2 or 3 women that you think have a legitimate shot to win the race?
I think Courtney Dauwalter is the woman who's going to win the race.
Okay.
If she runs her race, if she's smart, and she is smart, if she pays attention to what she needs to pay attention to, she's going to win. The challenge for her is there's a chase pack that has experience, that has smarts, that has just that it factor. And if this year turns out to be one of those races that has an it factor, like 26 had, like 1998 had, like 1985 had, then she's going to lose.
Yeah.
But if she's ready to respond to that, she's going to win.
So you think she's the most talented woman in the field, and as long as she does the right thing, she's going to pull it off? Who do you think
I don't think she's the most talented woman in the field.
I
think you measure.
That's a difference. Yeah.
I think that was cool for you to put words in my mouth like that. For a young little kid like you to say, "Oh, so you're saying she's talented, so she's going to win." I think she's a smart, hard, fast runner who knows how to run 100-mile races. But after 70 miles, it's about a whole lot more than just that.
Totally.
And I don't know if she has that. Mm-hmm. Only she's going to know the answer to that. And only we are going to get the answer to that question on Saturday night, Sunday morning.
And I would say we saw a little bit of that back last fall when she ran the Moab 240.
I think we did.
I mean, not that I don't think it's quite as an impressive performance as some people may lay it out to, because she won overall and all that. But it's the fact that she was still running relatively strong after all those miles, after all that terrain. And if she can continue to do that on a really hot, tough day at Western States, she can run that last 30, 40 miles very quickly.
And if she can't, there are some really, really
so maybe
talented.
Give us 1 or 2 more women that you're looking
well,
at.
I would be really worried about Casey Lichtai, Stephanie Violette, and Eliza LaPierre.
Yeah.
And then maybe Lucy Bartholomew and Elsa McDonald. I mean, I would be really worried if I was front running in this field about those 5. And it's going to be so dynamic and so fun and so interesting to see. I mean, if Courtney screws it up, they're going to be ready to unscrew it up for her.
Yeah. What about you, Brian?
I mean, AJW really did a good job of hitting on those very front runners, and I think sort of the X factors here. I mean, we have the Courtneys and the Casey and the Stephanie, and having people like Camellia Mayfield and Caitlin Gerben, who ran a great race, Amanda Basham, Elsa McDonald, like those folks can surprise.
Right.
And on the hot days like this really shake things up.
Right.
And you can have somebody who you don't think can quite maybe necessarily win the race on paper, or is maybe the favorite, and totally nails it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you would have called Pam Smith before she won, or
I wouldn't
Right.
totally
no,
wouldn't
but
have.
And
No.
she's-
one of those can be. I mean, she's here, but
She's
she's
an
And
injured.
she's still here, but
But-
she's got a cougar in her closet.
Must be
Or
nice.
on her sofa.
So I don't have much to add to that. I think you guys covered most of the important and interesting stuff. So maybe what's another thing in the women's field before we transition to the men's field? Another maybe non-elite storyline that you guys are interested in following?
Are you going to talk about Diana Fitzpatrick?
Oh my God, Diana Fitzpatrick. Diana Fitzpatrick has finished the race 4 times, all under 24. She's 60 years old. She is, I mean, we love Gunhild Swanson. We all do. But Gunhild ran a 25-something. Diana's going to crush that.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. You can mark that down. I mean, Diana is going to run. I mean, if she goes over 24, it's not going to be by much, but man, she knows how to run the race. She's smart. She's sophisticated. She's been in these mountains before. Gunhild did awesome stuff when she was here as a 60-year-old. Diana's going to crush it.
Brian?
I knew he was going to talk about Diana. Like that's the other woman's story, and it's really going to be a good one.
Yeah, I actually had that written down too. And Diana's a good personal friend of my wife and I. We actually had dinner with them last week, and she seems very ready. So that'll be an interesting thing for everybody else to follow as well.
I mean, just Megan Laws again. I mean, like, we talk about Diana, but like Megan Laws is now 57, correct? And like going to crush it again. Like she was the top pick for 8th in our prediction contest, and that's a safe pick to be somewhere in that 6th to 10th, or maybe even better on a ridiculous.
I mean, the amazing thing about Megan is she's going to be in the running for the 40 and under.
She could win the Masters.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, I think let's transition now to the men's race. I think it's a little bit more predictable in terms of the favorites, a little bit more concrete with Jim and Francois and Tim Frericks in the field. So maybe instead of talking about that, let's sort of hear who you guys are looking at to be kind of a dark horse, Seth Swanson type person who might show up and surprise and be on the podium.
I mean, I kind of have to look in the other direction, that there's just such a set of solid guys who show up in this particular year, a hot year. And just so many of them we always think of Jeff Browning or Ian Sharman, but there's like the Paul Giblins and the Jesse Haynes and all these guys who, like, I don't want to bet against them finishing in the top 10, especially in a rough year like this.
Kyle Paitieri, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that guy is ready to go.
Yeah. He finished last year on a broken ankle.
Yeah,
basically. Yeah.
I mean, he's a badass and he's smart. And, you know, I do want to talk about Jim for a second, because it's like third strike and you're out.
Yeah.
And I've been around the race long enough to know that you can't do that for too much longer.
Yeah.
So he's going to have to run his race. He's going to have his shit together. He's going to have to really pay attention to like how he's feeling and what he's doing and what he knows he can do and what he knows he can't do. Because there's guys chasing him that have been chasing him for years. I've thought a lot about it, and he's an Air Force guy, right? I mean, there's Army and Navy guys who just jump right in, and there's Marine guys who like see the big picture. The Air Force guys, they don't really know where they fit. And I think that's a lot about what Jim is doing here. He doesn't really know where he fits. Yeah. And Saturday is a time for him to say, here's where I fit. And if he crashes and burns and shits the bed again, then we all know, like, that's where he fits. But if he goes and runs, you know, a 15-10 and wins the thing in a hot year, then we also know where he fits. And I think that's important for the sport. It's important for, like, all of us who aspire to be something better than ourselves to actually listen to that. Yeah. And frankly, I think it's the same way for Courtney. It's the same way for Eliza. It's the same way for Kyle. It's the same way for people who've been around the sport long enough. Yeah. You know, Ian and even Jeff, like, to really, really find themselves in the sport. Because if there's something that differentiates ultra running from, like, sprint running or Olympics or cycling, or it's that you can find yourself in the sport. And the sad part about Jim is he hasn't done that yet. And I really want him to do that.
Yeah, we kind of tried to press him on that a little bit in our interview with him and see how he's going to approach it this year, because I think having employed the strategy that he has of just fireworks from the gun and have it backfire twice. If he does it a third time, then it's sort of like, what are you doing, you know? So it will be interesting to see how he chooses to execute the race, particularly with guys like Francois and Tim in the field who like to race aggressively as well and put pressure on the rest of the field early in the race. So I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, I mean, I think just talking about those couple front runners like Jim, Francois, and Tim, if any of them win, they have to kind of do something that they've never done. Jim has to stick it. Tim's running his first 100. Well, Francois is like, this is, you know, he's crushed it. He's the best mountain 100-mile runner in the world, but he hasn't nailed a race like this. So, like, if any of them do it, it's kind of a breakout establishment kind of race.
Well, I think that's a really interesting point. And that, Francois, this would be a different type of course that he's typically won on and been super successful on. Obviously, one of the best of all time. Frericks has won like some of the biggest races in the world, so he's got the experience having done that at Transvolcania and TNF, but he hasn't done the 100-miler. So, yeah, I think that's a super.
You know, I turn it around, Dylan, and say, I wish you were in this race.
I'm glad I'm not.
Yeah, but I'm glad. I wish you were. Yeah. You know, because the way you've run in the last 6 years, the way you've been smart about your training, the way you've been sophisticated in your understanding of what the sport is and what it should be and what it can be, I hope that we're sitting at this table in 2, 3, 5 years and talking to you about this stuff. Because, I mean, God, this is Dylan Bowman, everybody. Let's hear it for him. I mean, the guy has picked his spots. He's incredibly smart. If you were in the field this year, you would certainly be, I mean, because Brian wouldn't be in the field, so you'd be the smartest guy in the field. Thank you. Megan's not in the field, too, so you'd be, well, if she was in, you'd be the second smartest person in the field. But the truth is, Dylan, what you've, and I'm so glad you're here that I can do this, what you've done and made a difference in people's understanding of the sport is, yeah, here we are, and there's all these guys that we're talking about who are, 36 hours away from starting this race. But you really, Dylan, have sent a message to the rest of us that we can be better. We can be stronger. We can be smarter. And most of all, we can be smarter. And you're a smart guy. You're a sophisticated guy. And when the dust settles on all this stuff, I hope that you're back here running this race and running a 14:41. 59.
So that transitions me.
Wait. Andy, thank you, and I'll pay you for all that later. But, I appreciate it, especially coming from you. It means a lot. But I mean, before I kind of want to talk more about like the other men in the field aside from the Jims and Tims and Francois. I know we're already going way over time, as is predictable. But for me,
there's
got 37 minutes on the floor.
There's a time limit on this thing.
I mean, for me, the two guys I'm looking at, and one person I think is shocking that he's not being discussed more, is Didrik Hermansen, who finished second at this race 2 years ago. And he's back and, clearly flying on the radar.
And Giblin, whatever his first name is, Paul Giblin.
Yeah, but I mean, a previous podium finisher who almost nobody's talking about. And then we spoke to Chris Brown yesterday, who I was super impressed with. Yeah. Good head on his shoulders, great, sense of humor. And I see a lot like Seth Swanson, from 2014, who got in via the lottery, didn't have to race a ton early in the season, coming in fresh and focused on this race specifically, and clearly talented, having done well in his only 100-miler and also a TNF 50 in a world-class field. So those would be my two.
Well, and Chris Brown did well on a hot day in San Diego. Yeah. Yep. 17-ish.
And he lives in Santa Barbara, so I'm sure he's okay in the heat. But.
So I got a question for AJW. This is a question I'm sure you thought of for yourself. The men's 50 to 59 record is in play this weekend. Or is it? Carl Meltzer.
I have to think it is. I mean, I've noodled on that a lot. It's 1843. Latimer said it in in 1989. Carl's put his eyes on it. Don't forget Dean Karnazes is here too. As a 55-year-old, that's a hard run. 1843, trust me, is hard on a pure course where you actually have to go to Robinson Flat and have to do it. I think Carl can do it, but it's going to take a perfect day. It's going to take a perfect day for Carl, and I'm not sure if he's ready for a perfect day. He'll probably tell us by Robinson Flat or Dusty if he is. But if someone brings that down, it's going to be huge.
Yeah, that's an incredible record. The other record that I think is going to be interesting to watch and that I hadn't thought about until yesterday is Jeff Browning called out the Masters record, which Mike Morton holds and set in, I think, 2013. Yeah, 15:45, and Jeff's 46 years old, looking to go sub 16. Another incredible storyline there.
If Jeff could do 15:46, I'd be impressed.
Especially in these conditions. I mean, we're talking about age group records, and the men's 70 and up is also in play. But are any of these really in play with it being maybe not the top 3 year, but it's going to be a dang hot year.
It's going to be a hot year. It's going to be a hot year.
I mean, that's kind of temper the expectations, because there's years that, I think you're going to have to break 16 to win, but it might not be a low 15, high 14 year.
I think 1 or 2 guys will be under 15, and what I'd really love to see is a
16.
woman.
No, he's
under
15 or under 16?
Under 15.
You think 1 or 2 guys under 15?
Yeah.
Okay.
If they're going to win,
a hot take, Devo.
Well, no, that's great.
If they're going to win,
that's great. Yeah. I don't doubt your knowledge. Yeah.
But I think
don't spoil it, because we have that's our finisher.
I think it's better. I think it's better for 3 women to go under 18.
Yeah.
That's what I'd really like to see.
Before we move off that topic, I think one other interesting storyline that's, I think, worthy of mentioning is Ian Sharman, who has finished in the top 10 8 years in a row. Andy's done it 7.
Screw that guy. I'm out of here.
So,
is he in the room somewhere?
Yeah, Ian Sharman, a true, consistent champion of the sport, who's been doing it as good as anybody at the distance for a long time, at least in terms of consistency and stuff. I think that'll be interesting to see if he can go for number 9, and then, of course, next year going for number 10.
So I remember, at the risk of boring people, this dude passed me in 2009, and my pacer said, "Oh, that's the guy who just got 24th at Comrades," and he thinks Western States is a fun little hobby. And it was the same guy who didn't even show up for the awards, right? Because he didn't know that the awards were like a thing. But that's Ian. And now he's going for number 9. He's going to get number 10, and he's going to crush us all. I mean, Eric Skadden and I were talking about it, and Tweetmeyer and Ann and I have talked about it too. I mean, the guy Ian Sharman has done something at Western States that I think nobody really will understand until it's all said and done. But he's going to get 10 top 10s. I mean, Doug Latimer did it in a different era. Nikki Kimball did it on the women's side.
Did Trayson do it?
Oh, Trayson, yeah. But
just give him perspective.
Yeah, there is that Ann Trayson thing. Yeah. We all just put an asterisk. But yeah, it's amazing. And so he just has to make a little challenge for himself, and he'll be fine. No one's worried about Ian Sharman.
Yeah.
But
he's almost the most automatic person.
He is so automatic. Yeah.
But you're not going to hear a word from him about him being automatic. He
just
gets it done. And
He gets it done. He rolls in. Yeah. His heel still touches ass.
Those majestic calves that he has.
Yeah, whatever they are.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, unless you guys have anything to add to the men's thing, we can transition to who we think is going to win and in what time.
I'm sure Powell has something to add.
Who wants to start?
Go for it.
Both men and women. Maybe start with.
I think it's time for Jim to win.
Okay.
Yep.
I've seen him both years. I've gotten to know him a little bit. I still question a little bit of what overtakes him when he gets to that place between Robinson Flat and Dusty, when you're just like feeling so good. But I honestly think he knows he has to have his shit together this year or he's done.
I think he does too.
And if he doesn't, frankly, Dylan and Brian, I'll be the first to tell him, dude, you screwed this up, and you're screwed for the rest of your life.
All right. So what time does Jim run?
I don't care about his time.
Well, I want you to predict a time. You said at least 2 men under 15. What do you
Yeah,
think
well,
Jim
I mean,
runs to win?
I think he's going to be crawling after 14:42. I mean, for those, I don't know if anyone was here in 2012, but it was like raining.
Yeah.
It was practically snowing. You might have run it that year.
I did.
I mean, it was like
It was puffy
cold.
jacket or Robinson
I mean, it was
Flat weather.
puffy jacket. they had like 400 pounds of ice that just melted at Robinson Flat.
But for perspective, that was the year Ellie Greenwood broke the unbreakable
That broke the
record
unbreakable
by
record by
50
Ann
minutes.
Trayson. Yeah. The only woman to ever go under 17. So, I mean, we're not going to have one of those years.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if Jim can creep around 1450, 1455, if he gets to
1450, we got him on record. Jim, 1450. Your women's pick.
Courtney.
In what time?
Courtney's fast as shit. I don't think Courtney knows how fast she is, but I don't think she's ever had like Casey, Stephanie, and Eliza and Lucy chasing her.
Yeah.
So she's gonna have to go under 18.
Yeah.
She's got like only 2 women have gone under 18. Ellie and Ann and Casey. So 3. I think she's going to have to be the 4th to go under 18, but it's going to be like 1750.
Okay.
I'm going to pick the same 2 people. I went back and forth on the men's win. Mostly, does Jim blow up or not? I think Tim Frericks was my pick before. Finally deciding on Jim. I'm going to say he just nails it. It's going to be a hot year, 1438.
Woo! He's got the record.
Why not?
Okay. Yeah. Why not?
I guess
fading to it.
I guess I better get to the river in time.
All right. So what about
Fading,
Courtney?
but I mean, like it's going to be a go out.
Yeah.
What's Courtney going to do?
I'm hoping. I mean, it's her first go here. I
Yeah.
mean, Jim is pushed to that line twice and failed. Maybe this third time, I think he just pushes toward it and gets it. Courtney hasn't. I hope she runs a little more conservative race and runs 18:10. I don't know. I mean, that's probably too wide a disparity between the 2 fields. But I mean, yeah.
Listen,
But
we're
you,
just guessing.
Yeah,
We're just
totally.
guessing at this point. Well, I'm glad that I have a different answer than both you guys on both. But
So what do you got?
yeah, so on the men's side, I can't look past Tim Frericks. Not only do I think he's top 5 most handsome men in the sport, but
You mean the first 4 are you?
I got Hal Kerner, obviously. Tim
I don't even. He's 0.
Yeah.
All right,
No, but
wait.
I think Tim, he's got the experience winning big races, and he I think races aggressively, but not recklessly, like Jim has a propensity to do. Plus, he I think is more fresh coming into the race because he was injured earlier in the spring. He said he got a really solid 8-week training block in, and he's getting fit at just the right time. And usually for me, that means that I'm fit and I have energy. And in this race, and particularly in 100 milers, I just think that's so important to have that desire to go to the well. There.
So you have Tim winning.
I got Tim winning, but I've got him at 15:10. So I don't have anybody under 15.
No one under
No one
15
under 15
because of the heat.
because of the heat. But I wouldn't put it past him.
Women's side?
Women's side, I've got a good feeling about this one, and I've picked Stephanie Violet to win her second Cougar. And for a few similar reasons, I think, well, first of all, she's a past champion. So, she's done it before. She knows what it takes. She's also been on the podium another time. And she's had recent disappointment. She had disappointment last year, and that you can't discount the motivation that comes from that. And I think she's finally passed like her injury that kept her out of the sport, her Achilles, which laid her up for a year, I think is finally in her rearview mirror. And I think she's hungry. She's got great guidance from Jason Coop and has been doing really good training. And just the experience factor I don't think you can discount. But again, I don't think it's going to be a super fast race. Stephanie has run, I think, 18:01 in the past.
Yeah.
I've got her running 18:20 this year.
So, quick question. Tim. Does that mean we all pick Francois for second?
I didn't go that deep. I mean,
You just went with one.
It's insane to pick against the guy. I mean,
Yeah,
he's the greatest 100-miler potentially ever, certainly of our generation.
Yeah.
You look past Killian a little bit, but I mean, the only thing that makes you look past him is like
The heat.
the heat, the terrain is not necessarily in his wheelhouse, and does he have like the energy again? He won UTMB in an insane battle, and I don't think you can discount what that takes out of you. And then 6 weeks later, he did the John Muir Trail and broke the record by 12 hours in like just an insane 3-day excursion.
But he also picks his battles.
He picks his battles, yeah.
He hasn't done it since.
I would not be shocked at all if Francois won and broke the record. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to pick against the Cowboys. And I think the other thing is, that I think is interesting as it pertains to the Cowboys is Flagstaff, I think, is just such a uniquely good place to train for this race. You have the altitude, you have the heat, you have the canyon where you can run downhill hard a lot, and you've got the community. You've got people who can push you. And so I gotta think that a Cowboy's going to win the race, whether it's Jim or Tim, who knows? But I wouldn't be surprised to see 2 or 3 of those guys, or all 4 of them in the top 10. Yeah.
So what's the big surprise this year? What's the thing that we're not thinking about? What's this year's Gunhild? What's this year's person who melts down and then comes back to life?
The fun thought I've had is a couple years ago we had, was it Annie Trent coming in with Gunhild Swanson? Mm-hmm. Was it Austin Tweetmeyer who's running this year?
Austin Tweetmeyer is in the race.
I hope he has a great race, but I also have this picture in my mind of him finishing with one of those 70-plus-year-old dudes.
Austin Tweetmeyer is in the race. Tim's offspring.
Yeah, another one of the...
Yeah, we actually tried to get them to come on the show just because I think that's such a great story. And just to wrap it up, Tim Tweetmeyer, who's on the board, has finished the race 25 times, all under 24 hours. An absolute legend for those of us who follow the sport. But his son is running the race this year, and he is going to be pacing his son. And for the first time, I think he is not going to be... he had some responsibility that he used to do at the race every year that he can't do this year because he's going to be pacing his son to his first ever Western States.
His responsibility is running out and chasing in the horses at the very end of the race, and he just couldn't commit himself to that.
Well, I think that's a great place for us to wrap it up. We could go on forever, as you guys can tell, but we've been going for 30 minutes already. So we appreciate everybody's patience and willingness to stick around. And, these guys are a wealth of knowledge, so if you see them around, ask them more questions. I think we should wrap it up by mentioning, obviously, the sponsors, Drymax, Buff, and Jaybird Sports, who support iRunFar, the Coffeebar, who has generously lent us their space for 2 days, asking nothing in return. So please get coffees from them this week.
And I just have to thank you, Dylan Bowman, for pestering us for 3 or 4 years to make this happen. He did it, finally.
Thank you, everyone.
And I think it's important to note that we need to thank Brian and Megan
And Derek Lytle back there for
iRunFar is the voice of the sport. There's no doubt it's the voice of the sport. You guys do so much for so little, and you make us feel so good about it. So to Brian and Megan and all that you guys do, let's hear it for iRunFar.
And that's a wrap.
Now let's go get a beer.
You already have one. How do you not drink that?
I don't want to